Hello. We are going to talk about what grief really is. This is something I'm really excited about. Grief is actually, where do I even begin? I talk a lot on the cognitive core. A lot on the cognitive core. So, in case you are new to the Healing Garden, we're going to cover this very quickly. You have an identity inside of you. The cognitive core is inside of your identity. It's made up of 5 elements. The elements are your ethics, your beliefs, your behavior or your actions, your voice, and those 4 things combined make up the 5th element, your perspective. Whenever anything, data, information, a new belief is received by our system, a processing begins to happen. The information comes in as a belief into our belief system. Each one of these things has its own functioning system. This is really important. When we receive new information, it is inserted into our belief system. Now, it could be something simple as, oh, look, Ben and Jerry's has a new ice cream. Really low key on that, but let's use that. So they have a new ice cream flavor, data is inserted, your perspective shifts from, I have only 89 flavors to choose from. I now have 90 flavors to choose from. Really a small degree adjustment. Okay. Abuse happens when somebody forces their belief into your belief system. Now you have cognitive dissonance. Now you have emotions going boing, boing, boing. There's a problem. You have your subconscious going red alert. And this is where mental illness develops from. Now you have something else happening. Regardless, whatever comes into your system, this belief is always adjusting. I see this massive ship, and it's like you've got a rudder, and you adjust the rudder, and the ship shifts, and you adjust the rudder, and it shifts. And this is happening inside of your cognitive core at all times, every day, especially in math class. When you receive new information, you have that belief adjusting and adjusting. This is it should be a very gentle process because your perspective is absolutely dependent upon the direction of that change, the degree in which it's going to shift. All right. So when abuse happens, what ends up happening usually is it's a jerk. The other time you receive a massive shift that you're not ready for is when, unfortunately, you receive significantly drastic information. If you, and these are going to be some heavy examples, Ukraine going to war. If you live in Ukraine, that's a big deal. That's a really big deal. That went from everything's okay, things were building, you were kind of concerned about the political situation to boom, now it's over here. Now you've got problems. In addition to that information, it could be everything's fine when your father passes away. Boom, massive shift. In one of my previous videos on burnout, I talk about how I just received information from my father that very cryptically, it looks like he's very sick. That was new information. Now, I knew he had other things happening. Watch this. So, 6 months ago, I picked up on a couple things and I was able to go, it's heading this way. He said what he said to me the other day. It shifted this way. So, it's not going to be a sudden loss when he passes. It's still going to affect me because I have to completely readjust my new perspective. I have not yet processed this, so pardon me if I start getting emotional because I think it just started to process. But this is it. This is grief. It's a slow process. And when we don't get the time to adjust accordingly, That's when grief starts. Now, there's a huge misconception on grief. I don't want to use the word grief at all because grief means loss, and that's not quite what's going on. You can lose things and not grieve, especially if it's subtle. Grief is actually an extreme emotion when your system does not adjust accordingly. So, what's really happening with grief is it is the processing system of your cognitive core. That's really what grief is. And the processing of this new information, whether it be good or bad, whether it be something small or huge, is still your cognitive core's processing system. Okay. I'm going to write that in the notes here because this is how the cognitive core's processing. Okay. Now, that's really, so let's get away from the word grief and let's look at just the cognitive core's processing system. Now, when the cognitive core receives new information, Ben and Jerry has a new flavor of ice cream versus my father is passing away. That's a massive cognitive core processing that's got to take place. It doesn't matter if it's this big or this big, it still has to be processed. So when you think of grief, stop thinking of it as grief, death, loss. Think of it instead as the cognitive core is processing new information. Now, there are 5 stages to the cognitive core's processing system: shock, negotiation, surprise. Oh, look, Ben and Jerry's has a new ice cream flavor. Shock is surprise. Surprise is when it's good, shock is when it's bad. Well, negative, sad. Surprise is when it's a good thing. You have positives and negatives, you have happy and sad of each stage. Then you have the negotiation. What other flavors are there? Or, no way, did they really? Now you're looking at denial, you're looking at negotiation. Are you sure? And the purpose of this stage, stage 2 of the cognitive core processing system, is to guarantee that the information they have received is correct because you don't want a false belief being inserted into your system because that's going to cause some significant problem. So you're going to enter into a denial negotiation. Again, the smaller it is, the less likely this is going to happen. It can still happen. It will still happen. That's the shock phase, but we're talking like seconds and then it blows over. And the requirements for the processing are going to be very subtle. The next stage is going to be joy or anger. Yippee, they have a new flavor. Or I'm really angry because someone has hurt my cognitive core. And that's what anger really is, by the way. Anger is when and this is it. This is cut dry. It's this little definition. It's a big definition, but it's really it. Anger is the stage of the cognitive core processing system where the subconsciousness gets angry, gets upset because you've damaged the process. Look at all the work I've done. Now you've just messed up the cognitive core processing. How dare you damage my system? It's self defense. Anger has nothing to do with anything other than your love for yourself. It is your self preservation for the cognitive core. That's all it is. It is your subconsciousness getting really pissed off that somebody has messed with your cognitive core's processing system because it's a lot of work to keep this thing functioning and healthy. And it's dire if it gets damaged. Many of us have a damaged cognitive core that during the processing system, it got messed up. So you're in the anger stage or the joy stage. Joy, yay! It's my birthday, or yay, I've got this gift that somebody gave me and it's wonderful. It could be anything. That's that explosion of yippee yay. Or it's that anger of, okay, now you're damaging my cognitive core, you're threatening my system. It's self-love. The next stage after that, after you basically your defenses or your celebration go up, the next stage after that is counting your losses or counting your gains. You have your new ice cream. You're sitting there eating your Ben& and Jerry's new flavor ice cream, and you're doing your little happy dance. That is your counting your gain. But if your father's passed away, it's going to be counting your loss. And this is the difference between I have lost this. What does this mean for my future? What does this mean going forward? With the Ben& and Jerry ice cream example, it's I'm going to buy this next week. I'm going to have this in my fridge at all times. And you're going to constantly keep it stocked. Now you're making plans for the future because you're adjusting your perspective. You're going to tell your friends, hey, have you tried this new ice cream? Maybe you're texting your friend right now, you got to try this new ice cream. It's awesome. Whereas on the other side of that, it's that other extreme of I'm not going to have my fun. Oh, yeah, it's hitting me. You have to adjust the perspective accordingly. I'm huge on example, showing you the process as it takes place. And then you have a period of adjustment where your perspective has to adjust accordingly based on that degree. Now, acceptance is said to be the last stage. I disagree with this. Acceptance is the process itself. You're accepting it when you get the shock in the negotiation. You're accepting it. When you get angry, you're actually accepting it. You're accepting it. The whole process is actually the stages of acceptance. That's really what is happening. These are the stages of acceptance, not grief, acceptance. I'm going to write that down because I don't want to forget it. But this is the stages of acceptance, not grief. Because this is the process that everyone goes through, no matter how big or small, if it's good or bad. Now, so the last stage is actually adjustment. That's really not acceptance, it's adjustment. It's I've counted my losses or I've counted my gains, and now you adjust. And it's that fifth stage where, okay, this is going to be the change that's coming. All right. The acceptance stage may not be complete because there's a catch, and I'll go over that in a moment. But the next stage, the final stage, is adjustment. And the stage of adjustment. This is where adaptation really sets in. Adaptation. This is really where adapting sets in. So again, this is the stages of acceptance. It is the cognitive core's processing system, and it begins with either the good or the bad on either side. And it's either phenomenal, great, shock, surprise, and then it's the disbelief in the negotiation. Like, oh my goodness, I can't believe I won the lottery. Or my goodness, I can't believe Ben& Jerry's did it again. And then you have that joy celebration versus anger. And then you have I'm going to count my gains or I'm going to count my losses. And I'm going to assess how this is going to change my future expectations. And then you adapt to the new reality. Adapt to the new reality. So that is the line. That is the whole stages of acceptance. Now, let's talk about grief. When you are given a new belief, back to the cognitive core, you've got your 5 elements. When you are given new information, it begins the process of acceptance. At any one of these stages, the new belief can be rejected. At any one of these stages, people think that you get stuck in depression. Depression is the most renowned. If you suffer from depression, you actually, this is really what happened, is you received information. It began the stages of acceptance. You went through the shock and the denial. You went through the anger or the negotiation. You went through the anger. You got to the counting the loss. And then your system said, no, I won't. I refuse. And you push it away. You reject it. And then you get stuck. And you can't go on because you've thrown away the belief. That is what grief is. That's it. But it's more than that. It's getting stuck in the stages of acceptance. This one surprised me. This is actually, and we only hear about depression, and then depression is considered a mental illness, and then people are put on medication. And then I'm screaming, "Oh my God, what are you doing?" This is a simple stages of acceptance, and you get stuck. You got to locate the belief that your system rejected, and you got to get it back. Now, I'm going to show you this. The other one, the other stage where people get stuck a lot is anger. Those are the people who stomp around always angry. And then they're not given a diagnosis. They're just, oh, you've got anger problems. You should go to anger management class. And maybe a judge, if it gets bad enough, will say, you need to go to anger management. Anger management is when you get stuck. It's when you reject the belief in this stage. You were given the belief and you get to the anger stage and you reject the belief. Now you're permanently angry. Now you can't go on because you've thrown out the belief. Your system said, no, I refuse. I'm not going to process this. I refuse to accept it. And you get stuck right there in that anger stage. Now, there's no diagnosis for this. My question is, why is there a diagnosis for depression? There shouldn't be, in my opinion, because it's just the stages of acceptance. You're just stuck because you refused the belief. So this is my favorite one, being stuck in denial and negotiation. I went through a breakup, and it took me almost a year of negotiating with him and arguing and calling him up and reaccounting everything and renegotiating and trying to figure out. I was in a total state of confusion for a year. And this is actually, it was this event that made me realize the stages of acceptance and that you can get stuck at any stage. And up until this point, I had no idea what depression was. I was really racking my brain around it because I was looking at mental illness. I was going through all of the diagnoses that are available in the DSM-5. And I was just looking at depression going, it's not logical. Something's wrong. Something like my radar was just screaming over depression, that what they're claiming it to be is just not accurate. And when I started to dive into what exactly was wrong with me, we're going to talk about that next, that I was constantly calling up my ex-boyfriend going, I don't understand this. It was finally this moment of, son of a bitch, I am stuck in the denial negotiation stage. And that's when I realized you can get stuck in any stage. And that's when I realized that people with anger management issues walk around always angry because they're stuck in the anger stage. People with depression are stuck in the depression stage because they rejected the belief. Shock and disbelief negotiation, that is you gave me the belief and I went, I don't believe it. I don't believe it. What? No. And you can get stuck in any one of these 4 previous stages, any one of them. And as soon as you do that, as soon as your system rejects the belief, you stall out. And then you permanently get stuck in one of those 3 stages. So you walk around permanently stuck in denial and negotiation because you're trying to accept a belief. You get stuck in anger. You get stuck in depression because the stage of acceptance has been stalled out because it's not processing anymore. That's all this is. So grief is one small little portion of all of this. And I'll show you which one it is. Grief is just, you lose something. you receive the new belief that you've lost something, new job, new car, spouse, divorce, death of a family member or a pet. And you go through the period of the stages of acceptance and you get to depression and you just get stuck. It rejects, it rejects, and you just get stuck. Now you're grieving. That's it. It is one particular type of loss, one very particular side of the equation, and it is only taking into account one of the 5 parts of the process. That's it. That is all grief is. It is just this one very small section of this bigger process that's occurring. And no one ever looks at the big process. No one ever looks at the whole process. So our understanding of the stages of grief are understood. That's the only emphasis. So that when you have people who are going, I don't know why I'm angry all the time. You have people walking around going, I don't understand why I'm sad all the time. That's because you're stuck in the processing system. That's it. You're stuck in the stages of acceptance. And the goal is to process that new belief, to find out how it fits into your belief system and how it's going to adjust that rudder to your perspective so that you can make the changes accordingly to go on. And then you have people coming along saying to you, just let it go. Dude, you can't just let it go. You need to locate the belief, sit down with it, and process it. And you're not processing the belief. I cannot believe he's gone. One of my clients said that to me this last 2 weeks. I cannot believe he's gone. Yeah, you're stuck in the acceptance of stages. That's it. You can't, that's it. But he's always been there. Yes, because you're stuck in the stages of grief. You're stuck in the stages of acceptance. Your cognitive core's processing system stalled out while it was receiving a new belief. And all you need to do is get to that last stage, the stage of adjustment, the stage of adapting. And you can't get there if you don't accept the new belief. So that's really what grief is. Now, usually, no, not usually. I'm 43 years old, and I have learned that there is no usually with this. Society teaches us that we go through one stage at a time, that life is happy, you get one massive blow up grief or loss, and that's it. And that's not how life works. We are constantly, every day, receiving new information, constantly processing. And when it rains, it pours. That's when we receive multiple new beliefs that are not pleasant, that are constantly relaunching the stages of processing. This process is exhausting, and it requires self-care to balance out the amount of mental work you're going to do. This is where self-care really, and understanding the stages of acceptance is really going to go a long way to help you move through this properly and in a healthy fashion. It is vital that you understand the cognitive course processing system so that when you experience a loss, you can literally guide the new belief through each stage. That is ideally what you want to be doing. Okay, I have this new belief. I need to process it. What is the reality? This is the fun part. You get to choose your reality. You get to interpret it. Now, this is where abuse comes in, where people tell you what your reality is going to be. Society tells you what the reality is going to be. Whole nother topic. We'll talk about it in a different video later. But this is it. This is huge. Is society tells you what this belief should be, as somebody else tells you. And now you're trying to figure out your own, well, I got to figure out my reality. And you've got noise from abusers and outsiders and friends who mean well and mothers who don't know how to respect your boundaries, all telling you what your belief should be. And you're sitting here just trying to go through the processing system. You're just trying to go through the stages of acceptance. When I was, well, horrible topic, but on May 10th, I was raped. And my immediate thought was cognitive core processing system, accept it. That was it. Because if you do not go through this, it triggers PTSD. This is where PTSD comes from. because this is a rewiring of your nervous system. The cognitive course processing, well, no, it's not supposed to rewire your nervous system. The cognitive course processing system is supposed to flow easily. That's when it's working efficiently. But when you receive something too drastic, now you have PTSD. It rewires your nervous system to adjust to the process accordingly. So when trauma comes in, it rewires your nervous system. When something significantly horrible happens, it can rewire your nervous system. If you know, pay attention. This is it. If you know about the cognitive course processing system and how to proceed through the stages of acceptance in a healthy fashion, you can prevent your own PTSD from occurring, which is what I did. Literally during the rape, I started this process. I went, in my mind, he's raping you. I was drugged and I could not speak. I could not function. I was passing in and out of consciousness for hours. And while that was happening, I was processing it. I was going, okay, you're being raped. You can't speak. You can't move. You can't even stay awake. Process it. Accept the reality. Go through it. You're being raped. That's exactly what's happening. I was able to say to him, I think I've been roofied. And he kept having sex with me. And I had to process this information. I had to process the data, accept it. This is the reality. This is what's happening to you. Accept it. Move it through the stages. I couldn't feel anger. I couldn't feel any of it. Know what's going to happen. He's going to hijack your subconscious. He's going to take your subconscious and take your perspective. And he did. He gaslit me. And I could feel my subconscious going over here, betraying me. Yep, that's normal. By the way, that is normal. That is exactly what gaslighting does. It hijacks your subconscious and it hijacks your perspective so that while you're trying to do the cognitive course processing system, the gaslighter slash narcissist will take your perspective and they will try and tell you your reality. More abuse. And I knew that. As soon as he gaslit me, I went, okay, that's what's happening. Okay, make sure you keep your subconscious on your side. So after the rape, the next morning, I had a lot of mental work to do. I had to go through it. Come on, Anna. You got to go through it. You got to accept what happened. You got to know what happened. Process it, accept it, put it through the system. Because if I at all glitched with any of this, it would switch over to PTSD and rewire my brain. And I just unwired all of my brain. So I didn't want this to happen. Because I was able to keep this concept alive and aware, because I was able to identify what abuse was being done to me, and I understood the cognitive course processing system with the stages of acceptance, I was able to prevent PTSD from occurring. No nightmares. And after 1 week, I was laughing and I was smiling and I'm still happy because of the cognitive course processing system and being aware of the stages of acceptance. This is how you control your brain's ability to prevent mental illness. This is it. This is it right here. Understand this, process it. So how do you guide a belief? This is where your subconsciousness starts to, this is dialectical behavioral therapy, by the way, where it's basically internal dialogue where you're discussing with yourself what's going on. Oh my God, I can't believe he just did that. Oh my God, I can't believe, you got to believe it. You got to believe it. You got to believe it. A really common one with us is our mothers. Our mothers will tell us, oh my God, I can't believe she did this. I can't believe it. Belief is the core of mental illness, mental health, and trauma. Belief. This is all about belief. This is where it begins. Stop saying, I can't believe it. Why can't you believe it? What don't you believe? You don't believe that. I'll tell you what it is. With a mother, with an abusive, narcissistic mother, I'll tell you what it is. You have been brainwashed by your mother to believe what she wants you to believe, which is that she loves you or that she cares about you. But when she's a narcissist, no, she doesn't. She lied to you. And that conditioning is so embedded into your subconsciousness that you can't process the new data. And I'll tell you, it's not easy. I'm going to be very blunt with you. This is not easy, but it's all about accepting beliefs. It's all about limiting. We talk about limiting beliefs, and that's the new trending in mental health. This isn't just limiting beliefs. This is being able to tell the difference between a brainwashed, conditioned belief, a classically conditioned belief, an habitual belief, a societal belief that's been forced into you, and what your logic centers of your subconsciousness tell you really happened. That's the difference. I have a lot more to talk about just on belief and what it is. But belief is the core of this. What are you going to do with this new belief when it comes into you? And again, it doesn't matter if it's small or if it's large. The small ones stack up. And your ability to process this, your ability to guide it gently through each stage. You want to be angry. People who resist anger, who don't resist anger, don't resist anger. That's a stage. You need that. That's like resisting joy. Don't do it. It's like you win the lottery and or you are gifted a trip to Europe. You're going to have explosive joy, or you got that promotion you've been waiting for. That is the equivalent of anger. And you don't want to suppress that. It's part of it. It's the celebration of your identity, or it's the devastation of what's been done to your identity. It's self-love. And it's part of the process. Keep it going. Walk yourself through it. Allow the process to occur and keep your subconsciousness on your side. So next, what we're going to go over, what are we going to go over, is what's wrong with you, which is the third part of this beautiful little thing that I'm doing here. The first one was burnout. And then we talked about grief. The next one on the list is going to be what's wrong with you. And we're going to explore guilt and how this just meshes into all of this. So all of the links are below. Subscribe, follow, take a look at the services I offer, and start designing your healthcare plan today.